The horrific crime that occurred in Miami, USA on November 27, 2002 involved a young couple who were out for a walk after celebrating the anniversary of their relationship. They were ambushed by 5 unidentified girls and the man, who was then dragged into a van and subjected to horrific torture, although the man survived the attack. It had a lasting impact, and it took him several years of therapy to come to terms with the traumatic experience and find peace of mind. Ana Maria Angel was born in Medellin, Colombia in 1984, the daughter of Margarita Osorio, a teacher at a nearby school. The violence that gripped the nation when Ana Maria was a little girl led Margarita to the decision to leave her home country of Brazil in search of a better life for herself and her only child. Among other things, she thought that they would be safer there. So, full of hope, she went to North America with her 6-year-old daughter and arrived in Miami, Florida. Although she was a teacher by profession, she decided to quit her career and work as a cleaner in order to feel safe and stable and financially. They quickly adjusted to their new life, even though things were difficult at first because she was left alone in a foreign country with her baby. Ana Maria eventually developed into an outstanding student, excelling academically until she received her high school diploma. She joined the National High School Honor Society South Miami Schools for his outstanding academic performance. The girl combined her studies and sports with a part-time job in a stationery store, where she was also the captain and main goalkeeper of the women's football team. She did this to help her mother with household expenses and save money for her dream of a car, which she eventually purchased after several months of persistent labor. She loved her car until the day she was deprived of her life. As for her personal life, at the end of December 2001, the 17-year-old girl began dating Eddie Nelson Portobanco, a man her age. He studied at her high school. Ana Maria and Eddie got along well with each other and had many interests. The girl had several goals for the future, the first of which was to enlist in the U.S. Air Force. They spent time together and had great respect for each other. Her goal was to become a school principal after serving in the Army, which was somewhat similar to her mother's career path at home. Everything was going smoothly until April 27, 2002, when Eddie and Ana Maria agreed to go on a date. Eddie planned dinner for that day at a famous restaurant. The evening seemed to be going well until they decided to take a little romantic walk, during which they chatted about their lives, dreams and future. They ate and had a great time and then decided to dance a little. Everything went wrong when the couple was returning to Eddie's car. 5 young men, all of whom were of Artarican descent, blocked their way. 2 of them brandished 2 different types of weapons and told the couple that they needed to get into the car parked next to them. As the area is regularly patrolled, the victims were almost dragged into the car. The criminals forced the victims to lie on the floor of the rented van to avoid being noticed. They demanded that they hand over all their belongings, including wallets, cards, PIN codes, phones, and jewelry. The criminals then used the card to withdraw money from a nearby ATM. They then called a man who lived in the Orlando area using Eddie's cell phone, and it was this call that ultimately led to their discovery. After about 20 minutes of driving, the other passengers in the van began ordering Eddie to touch and kiss Ana Maria. At first he refused, but they started beating him on the head, so he had no choice. The attackers then demanded that his girlfriend take off her clothes and not raise her head. Eddie heard Ana Maria's cries for help, although he did not see what they were doing to her. Ultimately, these men ended up sexually assaulting her for approximately 25 minutes. When they finally reached a completely deserted shore, the attackers grabbed Eddie and threw him into the street, and then kicked him several times and stabbed him. Fearing for his life, he pretended to be dead in order to remain lying down and be able to call for help. Believing that Eddie was dead, they returned to the car, where the young man came to the conclusion that his girlfriend had also been abandoned. In fact, however, they ran away with her and all their wounds, and when he began to crawl to the side of the road, a passerby Eddie noticed him, informed him about what had happened, and the guy took him to the hospital. It turned out that there were 14 stab wounds on the man's body, as well as several other injuries. While Eddie was in the hospital, he admitted that it was quite possible that Ana Maria's attackers had abandoned her and wanted the police to find her as quickly as possible in another place, and if the police act quickly they will find her and everything will be fine. However, the exact opposite happened. Once again, the kidnappers pulled onto the side of the road and drove Ana Maria's van until they were in Palm Beach County. Then two of them pulled the girl out of the car and pinned her against the wall. She was forced to kneel down and beg for forgiveness, but before she could do so, one of the robbers pulled out a revolver and shot at her, missing. He tried to shoot again after she started screaming in despair, but this time it was like a horror story. The third attempt was decisive. This time the bullet flew out, instantly killing Anna Maria. The subjects left the body and returned to Orlando early on the morning of Sunday the 28th. Eddie, who was with his father, was questioned by police. He told them everything that had happened and gave a detailed description of the attackers and the car they were driving. Having learned about this, the police began a thorough search for the kidnappers of the girl and herself. Her family, boyfriend and friends prayed that she would be found alive and even left many voice messages on her mobile phone begging the people who kidnapped her to release her. However, all their aspirations collapsed within a few days. As we mentioned at the beginning of the investigation, the police quickly discovered the criminals after they discovered a call from Eddie's phone that was connected to an apartment in Orlando rented by a 29-year-old man, Hector Manuel Carabao. FBI agents went to the apartment rental office in search of Hector. The manager told them that she did not know anyone with that name but could provide them with information about another man, 30-year-old Victor Manuel Carabao, who was listed as a tenant. The woman gave the police the keys and allowed them to search the apartment. Inside they found Victor along with Anna Maria's bank card, driver's license, wallet and mobile phone, as well as Eddie's wallet and a trash can. At that time, Anna Maria was still considered missing, but her shoes were found by police near her home. The police identified other suspects as a 16-year-old teenager named Jesus Torres Roman and his uncle, 20-year-old Joel Lebron. They were arrested on April 29 around 1 a.m. Joel's other apartment complex. After Victor and his brother Hector were taken into custody, two police officers went to another apartment complex to find the van in which the couple had been abducted. There, detectives found 22-year-old Cesar Antonio Main, who was also arrested and taken to the station at the same time, a box with stolen purchases and sports bag. The detectives expected a long day of interrogation, but this did not happen. Inside they found a pair of brown boots that turned out to have blood stains on them. To preserve evidence, the police took the suspect's clothes and glasses. After handcuffing the man and putting him in a patrol car, they took him to the station. First, during the interrogation, Jesus confessed to the crime without even waiting for his rights to be read to him. He said that Anna Maria was actually shot, and he also thought that Eddie was killed at the same moment. Jesus confessed to everything that he and his friends did that terrible night. He said that they actually molested Anna Maria, beat two young men, robbed them and committed several other terrible acts against them. The man said that he made a deal with his allies to discuss this among themselves, urged not to say anything, but in the end he could not stand the pressure. Keep in mind that this man was already a murderer and rapist at the age of 16, so the police assumed that the reason why he did not stood up and spoke due to his age. He looked quite depressed, sobbed, trembled and was very worried. In addition, Jesus told the authorities the exact location of Anna Maria's body. When the authorities arrived at the scene of the murder, they found that there was a body of a girl and her hands were folded in prayer. The girl apparently begged her captors not to take her life before they did so, and the coroner reported that multiple superficial wounds were found, suggesting that the wounds were sustained at the time of death. The corpse was taken to the medical examiner's office for all necessary tests. Anna Maria's mother was devastated when she saw her daughter's body brought into the office. She could not believe that, fleeing violence in her native Colombia, she had come to the United States where she thought she and her daughter would be safe, only to be met with such horror. The investigation showed that Anna Maria was raped by several men and experts found DNA on Wednesday's body, which gave investigators enough evidence to open a case. Family members mourned and said goodbye to Anna Maria. However, during the investigation, the police returned to one of the apartments of the Caesar suspects and found two bladed weapons in the closet in addition to a firearm, which a forensic expert later confirmed was the weapon that killed the girl. That day, Miami Beach police spokeswoman Bondell told media that 5 people were taken into custody. The officer stated that the couple was simply unlucky. They were in the wrong place at the wrong time and that they did not know the assailants. Miami County District Attorney Catherine Fernandez Rand responded that her officers were the best people for this case and that they would do whatever they could. Their strength to achieve justice for 2 families. After Jesus was taken to the Metro West County Detention Center, The suspects were transferred to Miami County and placed under surveillance, all of whom threatened to commit suicide. He felt like a criminal celebrity and intended to profit from it. Remember that Jesus was furious about what he and his associates had done, and that he first spoke to the authorities. We also know that when he was taken into custody he was sobbing and shaking. But as it turned out, this attitude had already changed and he had changed completely. Jesus loved to brag to other prisoners about his crime, telling them about it in any possible setting in the dining room, gym, cell and corridors. He seemed proud of what he did, trying to gain their respect. But in the end, even the worst of the criminals in this prison did not think that what Jesus and his group did was done out of pride. After a few months, the authorities decided to transfer him to another facility after learning that the prisoners they planned to kill him because they were tired of him. After he was sent to another prison, Jesus began to develop his own plan to kill Eddie. He knew that he was the only person who saw the events, that this man would identify the other 5 in court and that he would be the one to send them all to prison. So Jesus began looking for a way to let someone kill him. The police found out about this and sent an undercover agent to kill Eddie after the man offered him $12,000. Hector stated that he became enamored with Caesar's plan of action during a telephone conversation from the Miami County Jail where he was being held by Gladys Laporte, his 40-year-old girlfriend, who said that her partner expected Caesar to bring illegal substances to their apartment on the Saturday afternoon of the murder. Obviously this did not happen and all this was added to his case. Weeks passed. All the necessary materials for the trial were collected and at the first hearing all 5 defendants pleaded not guilty. Instead, the man came up empty-handed. The angry man claimed that Caesar told her and Hector that on Friday, April 26, the day before the incident, he went to Miami to buy drugs but was defrauded by the dealer. Enraged, he returned to Central Florida and met with 4 other participants to beat up the alleged dealer. According to police sources, all participants claimed in their statements that Caesar was the mastermind of this horrific attack. The only witness, Eddie, admitted that he could only identify one of the criminals. He explained that it was dark that day. He had problems with his vision. He was hit too hard on the head. He was in shock and clearly experienced terrible events, so he could not remember the faces of these people. Despite the fact that many assumed that investigators would surrender, DNA evidence and the testimony of other defendants turned out to be enough to initiate a case and convict the defendants, the one who is allegedly responsible. On September 23, 2002, 5 men were scheduled to stand trial for first-degree murder, attempted murder, rape with a weapon, armed kidnapping and robbery. However, the trial was delayed when defense attorney Robert Goodwin filed a motion to have the defendants arraigned. The tests continued one after another. Victor Carabao, then 39 years old, was the first to appear in court 5 years after the incident, and stated that not only did he not beat or kill the girl, but also did not use any violence against her. Victor claimed that he was not guilty of cruelty because the DNA sample he left on the victim's body was obtained as a result of his own self-gratification. However, his lawyer argued that because the guy did not pull the trigger, he faces a maximum life sentence. However, in April 2007, the jury returned a different verdict, suggested the death penalty, and 2 months later in June of the same year he was executed for the crime against Anna Maria. He also received 2 30-year sentences and 4 life sentences for separate crimes. 27-year-old Jesus was next found guilty. He was found not guilty of rape charges and sentenced to life in prison. A few months later in 2008, 22-year-old Jesus was the next to be found guilty. He admittedly diverted the guards' attention when the other 4 grabbed the couple and loaded them into the car. He claimed that he witnessed them alternately ridicule and embarrass Anna Maria, but he was only amused by it. He claimed that after taking the girl's life, they took her away. This man also admitted that he helped wash the inside of the car. Eddie said that he remembers punching and stabbing the defendant, and the court heard this testimony during the discussion of the case. After hearing the testimony, the judge sentenced Victor to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. 4 years later, 2 co-defendants, Joel and Hector, were brought to trial, but on June 24, 2010, the case took an unexpected turn when the Florida Supreme Court overturned Victor's death sentence on procedural grounds and remanded him for a new trial. On September 10, 2012, Joel's trial began, but the judge declared a mistrial. After some time, a retrial was held and on September 28, 2012, The jury returned a guilty verdict on all counts, sent the spouse to prison, and blamed the misunderstanding on the translator and his lawyer, but the Miami prosecutor rejected his claims, telling the court that the evidence against him was not as strong as against the other men, so they accepted the guilty plea. Hector was sentenced to death in addition to 6 consecutive life sentences, despite his lawyers asking for a life sentence before the judge made his decision. However, the visits of the girl's family to the court did not stop there because, as we all know, Joel's appeal was considered by the Supreme Court in December 2017, as a result of which his death sentence was overturned and a new stage of the case was ordered. They argued that the jury's verdict was not unanimous, therefore although we searched for information on this matter, we were unable to find any reports of a recent hearing or court decision regarding Victor Carb, whose death sentence was also overturned. However, it is important to remember that these people were already serving life sentences for prior offenses, and that the 5 people who killed Anna Maria will ultimately be imprisoned for the rest of their lives. Friends, write your opinion in the comments, and also subscribe to the channel and watch my other videos. Thank you all.